So the big question is, am I working for an oil company? I got a comment on one of my videos the other day. I think it was the one where the Ionity charger wasn't working the second time I tried it. And someone said, "Are you working for an oil company?" And then, I can't believe you're so negative, blah, blah, blah. And I just wanted to do a very short video, not even a rant. Oh, will it turn into a rant? Maybe, but I'm going to have to drive and talk at the same time, so apologies in advance. So it's true, I have been a little bit negative recently in my videos, but I believe in telling it as it is, and I don't think it does anyone any favours to sugarcoat it and to pretend that the world of EV ownership is some perfect place, because it really isn't. However, what it is far better than owning a normal car, in my opinion. For almost every possible metric, it's better. And really, the problems with owning an EV, it just comes down to three things. I'm going to say three things. Okay, firstly, price. Buying a new EV and buying a second-hand EV, in most cases, is far too expensive. But it will come down. Hello, Leaf. It will come down. They will come down in price. They're mechanically, they're simpler than an internal combustion engine car. Think about the engine of a normal car. Think about all the pistons, the spark plugs, the fan belt, the everything else. There's all these little elements, all these little bits that have to be made and put together and everything. Well, in an EV, you're driving around on, effectively, it's a computer with wheels. There's hardly anything to it. I'm not an engineer, actually, so forgive my simplification of that, but relatively speaking, EVs are really simple. So what there is, of course, a giant battery. And that giant battery is expensive. And that's the bit that has to come down in price. Tesla are probably the closest to getting to the point where it gets cheap enough, and there's some, what is it, like $100 per kilowatt hour or something. I think I'm probably wrong. There's going to be a point where once batteries hit that amount, the car becomes cheaper than an equivalent ICE car, internal combustion engine ICE. So the battery is the big thing, but once the technology advances to such a stage and the economies of scale get to the point where the batteries get cheap, then EVs will be cheaper. Until then, we have to put up with the fact that they're not cheaper, they're more expensive. I would argue that you're paying for a better car, so I think it's worth the premium. In the same way that some people, myself included, would pay extra for an Apple Mac rather than a Windows PC, because you are getting a better package. It's not quite as much the case with Apple computers anymore, but they look nicer. Most of the time they work better than Windows. So that's the first disadvantage of owning an EV. The second is charging. In fact, number 2 and 3, charging. The charging infrastructure, the public charging infrastructure, is far better than it ever used to be, but you're still going to have issues if you have to rely on public charging. If you don't have to rely on public charging, then you're laughing. An EV is perfect. So that's why I quite often say to people, if you have a second car, get rid of that and get an EV, because then you've always got the main one as a backup. So charging infrastructure is not great. In England it's not great. Or the UK, I should say. In the UK it's not great because we have Ecotricity, who have a monopoly on all the motorway services. Ecotricity's chargers, if you need to charge on CCS, well, they're not great. They're not that reliable. Perhaps they're more reliable than they used to be, but still, they're not great. On one Facebook group I'm on, the discussion actually became, let's tell us which Ecotricity chargers are working. And that's not how it should be, because you don't have that issue when you go to fill up with petrol, do you? EV owners put up with this kind of stuff because we love EVs and it's an emerging technology, and you have to expect, I suppose, a few bumps along the road. But for anyone new to EVs, I don't think we should skirt around the issue. I think we should say, well, obviously EVs are fantastic, but if you want to charge when you're out and about, be prepared for some issues. So there's that. Obviously all this is a moot point if you can charge at home, which most people do, I think. The vast majority do. And then, of course, it's absolutely fine. You charge at home and you don't have to worry about public charging very often unless you do a road trip or have to go a long distance. So that brings us to number 3, and that is the time it takes to charge. Because the charging infrastructure issues, they wouldn't be quite as much of an issue if it was relatively quick to charge. Because imagine you're going somewhere and you have to charge, and the charger's not working, and you're like, no, damn it, you've got to go somewhere else, and then you've got to charge there, and then you've got to wait 45 minutes to charge up to 80% probably. So about 45 minutes, and you've lost however long it took to get to the next charger. That's not ideal, is it? Plus factor in children in the car, angry wife, angry husband. The picture is not rosy. If you're driving a Leaf, then it's a different story, because at the moment it's a different story. CHAdeMO, which is the Leaf charger, is far more reliable with Ecotricity, so I never had any issues with the Leaf. And I imagine it's pretty much the same with Zoe, because I think the Zoe charger, which is the AC charger, again with Ecotricity, I think that's quite reliable. So we're just talking about CCS. Of course, CCS is winning the war of the charging standards. So if you have CCS, chances are you've probably got a bigger battery, actually. I mean, like the Nero and the Kona, even the new Teslas have CCS, and of course they've got very big batteries, so charging on public chargers becomes less of an issue. If you have something like an e-Golf, which is CCS, well, that's actually got quite a small battery, so you're not going to have much fun if you have to rely on the public chargers. I'm focusing on Ecotricity at the moment, but actually that's not the whole story, is it? Because you've got Instavolt, which are very good chargers, and they're contactless, so you don't have to set up an account. If you have Polar chargers are reliable, but they're not so great for pay-as-you-go. If you have Polar Plus, which is their sort of subscription service, then Polar's brilliant. And I don't have that, and I probably should, but I don't need public chargers very often. So that brings us to disadvantage number 4, and I didn't think about this in the car, because of course I've got the Nero now, and I don't even think about it anymore. And then I was editing and I was thinking, God, how did I forget that? So disadvantage number 4, is range. It was just like kind of like the most obvious one, and I can't believe I didn't think about it. But anyway, range. The vast majority of EVs, especially with the second-hand market, have pretty awful range, and although it is a disadvantage, it's one of those things that if once you have an EV, it generally doesn't become too much of a problem. You just get used to it, especially if it's a second car. But yeah, obviously we can't escape the fact that most of the cars have a terrible range. The Nero has, about 300. The Kona has about 300 miles. Obviously, the Teslas, you get any Tesla, and generally it's going to be pretty good. We'll be at 400 miles probably by the end of the year. I think the new Model S and X, I think, will be up to 400. Range, yes, it's a disadvantage with any of the current widely available EVs, but it's going to get better. So really, for balance, I should talk about the positives, but I could go on forever, and I need to do a separate video about that. But very quickly, the environment. Most people, I don't think, even care about the environment, particularly when they get an EV. It's like a secondary thing. But the environment. Obviously, you're driving around not emitting any horrible exhaust fumes. And you could argue, well, if you charge at home, maybe your electricity is powered still by non-renewable energy. But there's no excuse for that anymore, because there are so many energy companies that are 100% renewable, like Bulb or Ecotricity, and Octopus, many others. Then actually you're still driving around with, powered by the sun and wind. Also, I've heard it said before that if you have an EV, well, actually it gets cleaner the longer you have it. As the grid gets cleaner, so too does your car. So it's clean. It's quiet, which is nice for a leisurely drive. It's smooth. Well, no changing gear, although I always used to like a manual gearbox, but actually no, it's so much easier. Let's not kid ourselves. It's just a more relaxing drive. As I always say, it feels more zen, which is my new favorite word. Instant torque, so it goes very fast, even in a relatively cheap one, even in a Zoe or something, or a Leaf, it still goes nicely when you put your foot down. You're charging at home. I mean, that's like the big, if you can, anyway. Apologies to those that can't, but it's amazing waking up to a full tank. I still can't get over it. In fact, that's really like the number one best thing, but I appreciate it's not easy if you don't have the driveway or whatever. I'm probably forgetting something, aren't I?
They're so cheap to run, it's ridiculous. They're far more efficient. You can go down a hill and recharge. Benefits in the UK of 0% road tax, cheaper service, even a main dealer. No exhaust, they smell nice.
No, I would never drive anything else. And I would hope that's clear from my videos, but perhaps it isn't always. Anyway, I wanted this to be a quick video, and it's not. But I will do some follow-up videos about getting into more of the benefits. And I'll try and be a little less negative. Let me know what you think, add some comments, and if you subscribe, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.